Well, thank you, Audrey, and again, thanks, Steve, Jane, everybody at Weavers. Guys, it's a pleasure to be here, and albeit I can't see you all in person this year, um, I'm just excited that Steve put this thing together. As much fun as it is for you guys, it's equally as much fun for all of the vendors. I know my very close mate, I believe, is up next, Nick from Volley Volley, who will be doing his presentation after mine. You guys can give him as much business as you want to give him. Just lots of really difficult questions. So anyway, um, look, we're gonna talk a little bit. Some of the stuff for you guys that have been to my presentations in the past, it'll some of it will be similar. Um, and then kind of at the end, I've switched it up because I figured a lot of you folks have seen me now for a couple years. So you already know I'm going to be talking to you about conservation and legacy and all the things that I kind of go on and on about year after year. It's amazing you guys all still come to listen to the same thing all the time, but I appreciate it, and so do we at Sam's Tours. So what I'm going to do to start out with is I'm just going to play a video real quick, a little 3-minute video to kind of give you some ideas of what we're talking about kind of in this whole big thing, and then we'll kind of jump in. So I'm going to switch out of this screen here. Hold on just a second, and let me jump over to here if I can. It's going to let me do it. There we go. Whoops, wrong one. Sorry, people. I had it organized at one point. There we go. So we're going to start this here. See here how to get out of this thing. There it is. All right,
That
so let's
was
jump back. Okay,
those bump heads and the sea breams. So cool.
yeah, and you guys, I mean, I'll tell you, we talk about it a lot in my other. I'm not going to talk about it so much in this presentation, but we're going to do some other stuff that, Palau outside of all of this stuff, those kind of things. But as Odd said, look, Palau is one of those rare locations on the planet where you can actually see spawning events, and we have a lot of known aggregations in Palau. The three biggest that most people will come out to see would be the sea breams, which only happen once a year, as Audrey said. Those happen in March and April, and we get upwards of about 100,000 fish at those particular spawnings, along with bull sharks and oceanic blacktips feeding on the mass. So it's a really active, cool scene. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fish. And of course, for those of you who don't really know what a sea bream is, a sea bream's, to put it kind of in a comparison, would be about the size of a red snapper. They're very similar in kind of size with that. So we also have the red snapper spawning, which that happens actually every month. And so that happens the 4 days prior to the new moon. So you can come to Sam's, you can see it. We take you to the event, you get to witness, and we get about 20,000 red snappers at that event. Again, oceanic blacktips and bull sharks will come in and feed on that mass. And then once a month around the new moon, we get the bumphead parrotfish. And so you also saw the bumpheads. And at the moment, we have the largest known aggregation of bumphead parrotfish for spawning. And ours is over 3,000 individuals. And they all amass around one particular coral head every single month. And it's just amazing to see. So you got to join Dreamweaver's trip to Palau. You got to come out and see the spawning, enjoy it, have fun. It's going to be a good time. It is, I can tell you right now, it's definitely worth the time to get out there. And of course, by 2023, we hope that we're all back up and going well. So the good thing about Palau so far is that we do not and have not had any cases of COVID. We've been very lucky on our island. We shut down very early, and we've been very fortunate. Now the question will be is when we actually open it up again, but I'll talk about that in kind of Q&A, so we can go into that. So anyway, let's get started. If you haven't, because you've heard me before, crack a beer, drink a glass of wine, your favorite cocktail, and of course I'm supporting Colorado for all of you, the New Belgium product out of Fort Collins. So we're all good. Let's get going. So for those of you who haven't been to my stuff, let's talk a little bit real quickly about where Palau is if you're not familiar. And it's a place that you always hear about, but maybe you don't exactly know where it is. So Palau is on that right off that little tiny arrow right there. And it sits within the Coral Triangle, right? And so for those of you who are not familiar with the Coral Triangle, many of you I know go with weavers to Limbe, you go to Indonesia quite a bit, Philippines, those areas. Those areas constitute part of the Coral Triangle, which is thought to be the most biodiverse area on the planet in terms of marine ecosystems. 75% of all known coral species and over 2,000 species of fish live in the Coral Triangle. It's a highly diverse area. And we are fortunate enough to be 400 nautical miles, just basically what would be considered on the fringe of it. And so what that means for us is that we have almost the same amount of fish and coral species as they do. Not quite as many. We're over 1,500 species of fish, give or take. But we do have 750 species of coral in Palau, and all of the clams and all that kind of good stuff. So we're very, very close. Why is it kind of like that? So you see here this red line that's kind of coming down. You see Palau down there on the arrow. Palau sits along this Kyushu mountain ridge, which actually stretches from Japan all the way to Indonesia. And for all of you Coloradans, the best way I could describe it, it's like the Rockies being underwater. That's kind of what it's like. It provides all of the deep trenches that everybody hears about within the Pacific. And it's quite an amazing spot. It was formed about 65, 70 million years ago. So it's a very, very old area. And it's actually kind of the dividing line between the Pacific and a variety of different seas, Philippine Sea to kind of give an example. So it kind of divides all that up. And it's one of the things that makes Palau so very special, because along the outer edge of this particular line is where we get those deep trenches. And of course, that deep trench provides lots of nutrients, upwelling, all the things that we need to give spawning events and bring in the marine life that we have. So it's just all this gigantic cycle that keeps cycling through and through. So let's see here. Boom. A little bit of the geology and geography of it. Palau is kind of a mixed island. So the northern part is volcanic rock, and the southern part, which are the famous pictures of Palau, all the little islands and all that stuff, those are made of raised limestone. So that's how you get the mushroom look. And for those of you who've been to like Raja Ampat, they look almost exactly the same. We're just smaller in terms of the island size and things like that. But they're very similar in terms of the growth and things that are on top of them. There's about 400 islands that make up the total amount of islands. You got to remember, in Palau, if it sticks above the water, they consider it an island. So it kind of varies. It could be the size of your coffee table. That would constitute an island. If you took all of those islands and you put them together, you'd have about 177 square miles of landmass. Okay. And out of that, oddly enough, there are 16 states, because they modeled it years ago when they gained independence after the United States, and thought it best to break it up along old, ancient lines of the clans. And so it creates some issues from time to time, because it's just too many states, each trying to do something different. So there's approximately 21,000 people in our population. And then as of last year, we had 105,000 visitors in total. So a lot of you remember in years past, if you listened to me, that we had kind of this blip for a little while of Chinese tourism kind of coming in there. And we just opened the spigot a little bit, but it went up to about 150,000 tourists. And so since then, we've taken a lot of measures to try to mitigate, not that they were Chinese. It didn't matter whether they were Americans or Germans or whomever. It just, we couldn't handle that level of tourists. So we backed it back down to a reasonable level. And so this is the number we keep trying to target. One of the things that you also have to remember is that Palau itself was formed 35 million years ago, roughly, okay? And its sea level at the time when Palau was formed was about 120 meters lower, or 120 yards lower than it is today. So Palau was actually a solid landmass. So all of that would have been completely done. And so as the seas rose 12,000 years ago, that's how it formed the inner lagoon that you see there. And so as you see on the outside of this picture here, kind of the light blue area that's there, that's our barrier reef, if you will. We're kind of surrounded on this inside part. So that whole area is about 100 square miles of barrier reef. And then we have about 75 square miles of fringing reef. And then that big lagoon area kind of down towards the bottom left-hand side bottom left of your screen. That's the inner lagoon area. And that area can actually be as flat as a swimming pool on most days. Unless the winds kick up and get out of a certain area, we water ski back in through the islands back there. It's just beautiful. And so that area is encompasses about 200 square miles, right? So it's pretty good. There's a lot of diving area to cover here. Palau has more than 80 named sites, and just a plethora of stuff that's not named. I mean, there's too much. So you've got a lot of the nice part about it. On my other presentation, you'll see I get into the whole mapping and all that thing. Palau is surrounded on the eastern side by the Palau Trench, which is literally almost as deep as the Marianas Trench. And so if you put Mount Everest in that trench, you still would have more than a mile to go to the surface. So just a lot of nutrient-rich water funneling around to what would be the southwestern side, which is where Blue Corner, German Channel, the Nimilise Complex, Peleliu, all the areas that are very famous to everybody, that's where these all sit down here in that area. So today, look, I always talk about conservation, and I always ask, generally speaking, for those of you who've been before, you'll hear me ask a question of, as we talk about my speech or my talk, like what legacy are you going to leave? And it's something that we keep on. I'm going to go through that a little bit quickly for those of you who haven't been to one of them before. And then we're going to get into some things about Palau, just a little bit different stuff. We'll talk about sharks. We're talk about black water diving, which is something that you guys can do when you come out with Dreamweaver. We're going to talk about, and we'll talk about Jellyfish Lake a little bit. So we talk a little bit more about what Palau is famous for. But to start off, I do want to go through the things that are very near and dear to myself and Sam's tours, Dermot, Sam, all of us at the company. We conservation is paramount to everything we're doing in Palau. And so for those of you who don't know, Palau was actually the world's very first shark sanctuary in the world. Whoops, oh, I'm here, going the wrong way. In 2009, President Johnson Tribiong, on the floor of the United Nations, after many years of the industry and a lot of stakeholders in Palau really pushing to try to get protections for the marine life, and we have a lot of protection in Palau, but sharks were just one that was not. And of course, we did have people using they were fishing in the waters, and it was just becoming a problem. So after many years, Palau was declared a shark sanctuary in 2009. It was the world's largest protected area for sharks at the time. It was our entire EEZ. It was the very first time that it ever happened. And so we went a little bit further, and I'll talk about that in a minute too, in 2015 by the National Marine Sanctuary Protection Act in Palau that basically made our entire EEZ, or about 630,000 square kilometers, all of it is a sanctuary. So you cannot fish, cannot have anything to catch a shark, you can't long line, you can't drag net, you can't purse seine, you can't do any of it anymore. And so it's all out of there. And so it basically, that 2015 protected 80%, all of the islands are protected to outside foreign stuff. 80% of it is protected for everybody. And then we've left a 20% area, which I'll show in a second, for locals, because so locals are allowed to have an industry. They can only sell to local hotels and restaurants and stuff. No fish, no marine product at all is allowed to be exported from Palau at any time anymore. So again, what we're starting to see is now, all these years on, you're seeing all these things recoup. And just as a little side note, the one good thing about COVID has been that our reefs, because we haven't had any tourists in 6 or 7 months, reefs are already in great shape, but the fish behavior has changed. They've come back more en masse. It's a lot quieter. So when we do get the boats out, the diving is just spectacular. It's fantastic, absolutely brilliant. So, look, the reason we got involved in the shark thing was because there's about 180 to 200 million sharks killed every year, specifically for things other than, they don't consume the whole animal. It's not something where you could even argue of the ethics behind it. They pull them out, cut off the fins, put them back for the most part. And we did a study years ago to try to prove this point, and it was found that an individual shark is worth about 18 million US per year in tourism. Which, the sharks alive in Palau help us, and it's about 8% of our GDP. So it's not an unsubstantial number. And of course, we have lots of them. And there are, on any one dive in Palau, you could have well over 100 sharks. It would not be an uncommon thing. Depending on the time of year, they can get into the hundreds. On a normal dive, normal day is probably going to be, 50 or 50 plus. So they're always around. We have just an amazing variety and species of shark. You can see everything from the typical reef sharks that we're going to see, the gray tips, black tips, white tip reef sharks, but we also get tigers, bulls, oceanic black tips, silver tips, all the fun hammerheads, all that stuff come in and out. It's a lot of fun. And of course, Palau is one of the areas you can go to see where we can guarantee you're going to see sharks. I have no problem telling you that. So why protect sharks, and why keep them, at the forefront of everything that we're doing in Palau is, one, obviously they keep the food chain in check. they've done a lot of studies, if you kind of follow this stuff, where if you remove that portion, or if that top of the food chain kind of depletes, other things grow. Fish that eat seagrass, fish that eat crustaceans, fish that eat other things. Those things all start to grow and overtake the areas that, of course, then affect things downline. So there's a balance, as we all know, and keeping that balance and keeping those things in check at all costs is just paramount to what it is, which is one of the reasons why I believe that Palau is where it is all these years later in tourism. Palauans were practicing conservation 4,000 years ago before it was even a word. They didn't stress the reef. They didn't stress all of this stuff. So look, the second part is sharks may hold the cure for diseases. There's a lot of belief, sharks cannot get certain things that humans can. And why is that? The tissue is an anticoagulant. Okay, so they don't do that. It has antibacterial properties. It has all of these kind of things that they're doing. Hold on a second, folks. Sorry. There's a cure for. They're talking about cures for cancer. There's all kinds of things that they're searching on, and so they do hold a lot of things that scientists are studying on every day. Obviously, we talked about sharks boost to the local economies. There was a 2013 study just in Australia that basically it was Australia, the whole region was this $18 million number, right? And it accounts, more importantly, it accounts the shark industry itself, or the diving and all these things. It accounts for they estimated about 10,000 jobs in over 29 countries, just the shark side of things. So they're very, very important to that. It obviously also, I keep moving this thing, sorry guys. It also helps to keep the carbon cycle in motion. There's been some studies that find that large predatory animals in the ocean, and including whales, they keep a lot of carbon and things inside of them. And of course, the sharks will eat the whales when they're dead, which means they store a lot of this stuff. And of course, carbon is something that impacts our overall well-being in the long run. So the release of carbon off the ocean from dead animals, things of that nature, are something that can ultimately hurt us again down line. And the last part is, man, they're just cool. For those of you who haven't had a chance to dive with sharks yet, come to Palau. We'll put you in there. You'll be around a lot of them, but it's going to give you an experience to see how beautiful this creature is. With the Shark Sanctuary, one of the things that we get asked a lot is 10 years on, because this is the 10th anniversary, or last year was the 10th anniversary, we're in the 11th year now. So of course we cannot count this year on some level. Are the protections working? And the short answer to that is yes, they are working. One of the things that we're seeing, and again, now it's starting to be studied because we're starting to see this rise. So the number of juvenile reef sharks that we're starting to see in mass is 2 to 3 times what we would see 10 years ago. So when we go and the juveniles are out on the outer reefs, where we would see maybe 20 or 30 of them in a school together, you may now see 60 to 90. So this is now 10 years. Now, if you follow the gestation period of a juvenile shark or a shark in general, that 10-year period is exactly when you would start seeing these sharks big enough to be actually out on the outer reef. So it's very important. So it follows the timeline. Protections and enforcement still remain difficult. And that's actually the next conversation that's going to go on in Palau, is how do you protect an area that is so vast with a single boat, which is what our Navy is one boat. And so we're starting to draw on the help of Australia, the United States, other areas, to use drones and things like that to fly over our waters to be able to take down these, they can take down the registrations, they can do all these kind of things. There's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes. Japan donated 2 additional watercraft. They can't quite go to the outer reaches of our EEZ, but they certainly can patrol within the coastal waters and within 50 to 100 miles offshore for sure. And so we're starting to see this stuff start to take root. So these little actions do work, right? So again, just a couple pictures of all just sharks. These are the juvenile reef sharks that I'm showing you right here. These are the guys that come out. So they're just starting to come in mass. And of course, they can't move out on the outer reef until they get to a certain size. So it's a bit hard to know until they get up to that level, right? Again, as we start to see, there's over 100 sharks in this frame right here. This is just a single frame from a camera from from our own Jesse Alpert, who's an amazingly talented photographer. And again, a silver tip right there coming up from the depths with a cleaner rest right on its nose, mind you. And so let's just, again, and then in 2012, after we did the 2009 thing, we were named as a World Heritage Site in our Southern Lagoon. So that was another big thing. And of course, with that World Heritage Site designation comes a whole host of things that you have to keep doing. All right, so we wanted to keep going that, and we wanted to keep trying to start this movement and keep the thing going and moving along, and trying to tell people that, we were trying to convince the community and trying to convince our guests, visitors to the islands that, look, these ocean sanctuaries not only benefit the ecosystems, but they also benefit everyone here. So you are here because you want to see this, right? The Palauans' whole livelihood is based off the islands and the ecosystems. Everybody is tied into how well these sanctuaries go. So we started a thing called a bull, and a bull is an ancient Palauan word, and this was actually done by the high chiefs. And so throughout history with Palauans, there's two paramount high chiefs within the islands, and they can put in a bull, and a bull is like a moratorium. It's basically, so if they would see that a particular fish or a particular species of something was either getting smaller, depleted, all of those things, they would put in a bull, and a bull would basically say, okay, that's a moratorium. You cannot hunt, fish, do anything with that species. And that may last for years, that bull. That was most often in old days under penalty of death. So they would adjust their fisheries 1,000 years ago based on what they were seeing. So they were already doing this, right? And so you kind of get into that. And then we went a step further in 2015, which is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, which was the National Marine Sanctuary Act, making Palau the 6th largest marine sanctuary in the world. And the only reason we're not 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1 is because we ran out of water. So we don't have any more water to add to it. If we were asked, if somebody else wanted to give us their water, we'd be happy to make a sanctuary, but they just, so far, so good. So this is the whole area that you see. And then there's a little area in there around that's the 20%. That is for that blue, the domestic fishing zone there, which you see the darker blue. That's for Palauans only or locals. I can go out and fish, but you can't export, you can't do any of that stuff. So it's just so that they can carry on their traditional way. So building for the future, and a lot of you heard me talk about this before. Some of you have not. And those of you who are not familiar with this, in Palau is the very first country in the world that requires all visitors to Palau, stamped in their passport, to sign a pledge to the children of Palau that basically says that you're going to take care of their island. It's a legal document, and it is groundbreaking stuff. This was the next push into what we're doing, which is called the Legacy Project. And the Legacy Project goes back to my first question that I asked you about what legacy are you going to leave for the kids? I'm almost 50 years old. I've seen so much in my life, and I've seen so many things go down a path that they just shouldn't go. And so Palau is one of those last gems. And so it's one of these things that we're working really, really hard to protect. And the only way that we protect it is by, 1, educating, and 2, supporting. And what I mean by that is Palau made the choice to go down the tourism path and not stick with long line fishing and fishing, which brought more immediate money, if you will. They made a choice, and it was a very scary choice at the time, to say, no, we're going to cut out all of this GDP and we're going to go strictly down this path. And the only way they survive in this is by supporting those types of things. And whether any of all of the vendors that you have and all the people that Steve and the people at Weavers all deal with, these are really good people who work really hard at this stuff. And, you know, one of the things we always try to promote is supporting the destinations and the dive centers that are working really hard to do the right thing. We can spend our money anywhere. If you don't support places like Palau, and there are other places in the world like Palau, they will go the other way, because in the end, it's about money. And so if they can't make their money doing it this way, they're going to go another way. So we invite you guys all out to do this, and what legacy we're going to leave behind. I'm going to play you a short video real quick, and then I'm just going to jump in, and I'm going to finish up with some other quick stuff about the sharks and just all that kind of stuff. So then we can take some questions. So let me play this real fast because I got to jump out of here real quick. Just a second.
Hey, Mark, can you close down the video of us on the side, because it's kind of blocking some of your things.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah, I can turn it. What video of us? Oh, for you and me?
Yeah, you, me.
What do you mean? Nobody wants to see us anymore? Is that what you're telling me?
They don't want to see us twice. No.
Okay, there. Is that better? Is that better,
Yes.
better? Okay, hold on a minute here. I got to find this. Where did I put it? No, I can't find it. Oh, there it is. All right, guys. Let me just enlarge this real quick. And here you go.
Now, if you're heading to the Pacific island of Palau, you'll be signing up to a new pledge.
Human impact on Earth's environment is one of the biggest challenges facing the world today. The small island nation of Palau was feeling these impacts acutely. Tourists were damaging reefs, littering oceans and poaching protected species, their careless behaviour magnified by large numbers. But how could a small local population with limited resources police the high volume of visitors? What if we made the tourists police themselves? Introducing the Palau Pledge, a first-of-its-kind immigration policy for good. All visitors now need to sign an environmental pledge to gain admittance into Palau. Stamped into the passport of international arrivals, the pledge is a formal promise to Palau's children.
Children of Palau,
I take this pledge
to preserve and protect your beautiful and unique island home.
To implement this policy, government, the tourist industry and citizens were brought together. A new visa entry stamp was designed and issued in multiple languages, and immigration processes were changed.
The joy that comes with the pledge is the recognition that, hey, I can make a difference.
But we didn't stop at the passport stamp. We redesigned the tourism experience via a website, an in-flight film, a passport insert, local education, business accreditation, signage, penalties, and collateral. Launched at the UN, the Palau Pledge has been praised by international leaders and groups. Influencers helped inspire people to take the pledge online in solidarity with Palau.
Are you already seeing tourists behaving differently?
The awareness level is very high.
The reaction on social media has been widespread.
The Palau Pledge has raised global awareness of the responsibility this generation has to the next. But its biggest impact is local, in Palau.
I hope my children can see the beautiful place as I see today.
All right, guys, here I'm going to jump back in here real quick. Here. Just a second. I'm going to get down to the whole thing here. Okay, I haven't figured that part out yet. So, okay. So just on for the last few minutes here, and then we'll take questions and get to talk to everybody and have a little fun. So how many of you have ever thought about being an astronaut? I have. You know, have you ever wondered what it would be like to actually be in space and get to see all these little stars going around, you know, almost like sitting on top of a 14er at night with no other lights around? We invite you to dive into Blackwater. And for many of you may have done it in, for example, places like Hawaii. There's some other folks, Philippines is doing a little bit now as well. Our unique expedition team, which is one of the dive sides of our dive stuff, specializes in the spawning events, the blackwater diving, our tech side, all those kind of things. And of course, we invite you to dive in there. And we pioneered blackwater diving actually in Palau. And we do it a little bit differently than what most people are used for. So ours is an open ocean drift dive right off the outer reef. So we are in about 1,000 meters of water, 3,000 feet of water, 3,300 feet of water. We, like most people, we have light bars that go down underneath, and then we drift along that wall or off that wall in the open ocean, and we're pulling in some just utterly amazing stuff. It is actually the largest migration that is rarely seen by humans. Every night, millions and millions and millions of creatures travel up from the depths and come to, not normally maybe as shallow as we are, but they come towards the moonlight. And then they journey back down as it gets light. And they do this every single day. Most of them get within a couple kilometers or basically a mile or so to the surface. They don't actually they don't come all the way up. The lights, of course, we draw them up closer and closer so that we can try to do it. It is a photographer's dream to get some of this stuff. We've had everything. We've had, I think, what says 8 to 10 brand new species never even been seen before on these dives. So we just deploy a light bar at about 33 feet, and it tracks all kind of critters. And you can be tethered or free swimming, depends on the current. If we got a little bit more current, we make sure people are tethered. Everybody's got a xylem on the back so we can see everything, dive lights, that kind of stuff. And the dive generally lasts about 60, 90 minutes because it's not very deep. We stay kind of right off that 33 foot mark. It is absolutely brilliant for photographers. These are some of the stuff that we've got on some of these dives. You've got obviously a cauliflower jelly. You've got this one here, which is, I think this is probably one of my, this is my coolest. I'm going to mutilate this name, but it's a Pandidae jelly with the inside. And of course, a lot of these things are as big as your thumbnail. I mean, it's quite amazing. This is a juvenile Moorish idol. And so again, very, very small, microscopic on many levels. It's not a wide angle type photography thing. This is going to be much more in the macro area and things like that. I wouldn't advise this dive when you guys come out if you're not taking photography. It's really, you can do a night dive and get some really cool stuff. This is really kind of specialized into the diving, into the photography thing, because you're trying to get things that are as small as your fingernail there. So last but not least, let's talk about Jellyfish Lake. Well, you keep doing this, girl. You keep pinging me in here. So anyway, let's talk about Jellyfish Lake a little bit. So that's Jellyfish Lake right there. A lot of diving area to cover. You could see this. There's some people out here on this, and these, as you can see on the bottom left-hand side of this picture there, you see that kind of golden hue. I don't know if you guys can make it out on your screen. That's actually the jellyfish, and they move across this lake every day with the sunlight. And I don't know how many of you guys saw the National Geographic special that was out called Migrations. They did we filmed that. They did a part on Jellyfish Lake as one of the biggest migrations in the world. And these millions of jellyfish do this every single day. They move over, they drop down at night, come back, and they circulate through the island again as they go. Whoops, there we go. So there are actually 5 jellyfish lakes within Palau. They all have a persistent golden jellyfish or mystigious jellyfish population. The subspecies of the jellyfish are named after the first 5 Palauan presidents, but tourists are only allowed in the one lake. Okay, so to protect the ecosystem, we don't take tourists into any of the other lakes. It's about 14 acres in size, and it actually contains 2 species of jellyfish. There's the mystigious, and then we do actually have the moon jellyfish in there as well. They don't actually sting. So over evolution, they've evolved. Well, let me rephrase it. They do actually sting a little bit. If you got stung kind of on the inside of your mouth, it would hurt, or like very soft, delicate skin, you may feel a little bit. But other than that, you would never even know. It's kind of like swimming through a big thing of Jell-O. The depth's about 100 feet deep. It's a very deep lake, and of course, it is connected. It is tidal, so it is connected to the outside of the ocean around the island through vents, which is how they believe that they got in here. And again, in this image, if you kind of look, you can see all the jellyfish on the surface right here. Okay. These are the two types. This is the mystigius right here. And actually, I don't have a moon jellyfish in there. And many of you may know that we had an El Nino a few years back. Australia was hit very, very badly with it. Palau got really lucky. We did have some effects, but we didn't get any of the coral bleaching or anything. And the worst part about it was that the adult jellyfish had died off. It was all over CNN. It was all over a lot of news channels around the world. And those jellyfish are now back. They actually just go into a hibernative state, and they waited for the water and everything to get back to normal. So they would send out kind of little test plumes. The jellyfish would, oh, no, it's not right yet. So those jellyfish would die off, and then they would just hibernate. And so they were fine. The jellyfish were always fine. It was just a question of when they were going to come back. Now, almost 2 years into the thing, since we've gotten them back, we're back up to 6 to 8 million jellyfish within the lake. It's a truly, truly unique experience, and something that we hope that you guys will come out and see. And so that I don't take up too much time, and we can get back to answering some questions and answers, I'm just going to say thank you, and really appreciate you guys jumping on today. A lot of people today. Wow.
126.
Yeah, it's good, huh?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to put my screen back up here so I can see you again, Audrey?
Yeah.
There we go. And there's Steve again. Fantastic.
Do the other one next to it, and you can get everyone.
That's right.
So a few quick questions. We had someone ask about the macro reef at Sam's Tours. Mm-hmm. So I know that's included in packages, and is that also obviously macro diving? Yeah.
Oddly enough, we filmed an entire IMAX film under our dock.
FG.
So yeah. It wasn't set up that way. These guys came in, and they were going to be the first guys that ever shot 3D macro. So, for those of you who don't know how 3D is, they have two cameras. One's vertical, they shoot off of a mirror. So this guy shows up we had to have a hoist built into the boat to be able to handle the housing that they had made out of a 600-pound block of aluminum, which tells you how big the housing was. And so the problem with it is that these guys were trying to chase around macro critters in Palau, which is quite a difficult thing to do on the outer reefs when the currents are moving. So we just kind of made a suggestion. We were all jumping in and showing us the stuff under the dock, and they ended up, because they could put it on a tripod, they just shot most of the film underneath our dock. So we have an incredible amount of mandarin fish, pipefish, nudibranch clams. We get eagle rays in there. I mean, it's just a lot of crazy stuff under that dock. Now it's muck diving, and it's fine. You know, I mean, it's not going to be this crazy colorful reef under the dock, but it's some good stuff.
Cool. So I think we're out of time for questions because we have our next presentation at 4.
Yeah, I got 10 minutes.
Well, I got to get on and make sure that they're getting all set up. Remember how I chatted?
Hey, just say hi to Nick for me.
Yeah.
I think we need to invite Marc back to do a standalone presentation.
Yeah.
On Palau. There's just too much information to cover in this shorter period of time. So we'll
love to do it.
We'll make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, we should have a whole Palau night. Would anyone be interested in that? Put a clapping reaction on your screen. Yeah.
Nice.
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 Cool. Well, Okay, thanks so much, Mark. That was awesome, and all the initiatives that Palau is doing in order to keep Palau pristine for divers in the future is just so important to all of us, and really, really makes it a perfect destination for divers. It's a great place to support. We will definitely be there in 2022 with you. Jane is leading that trip, doing a liveaboard as well as ski nights with you. And then in 2023, the long distance one for the spawning, which I'm super excited about. And I think we're gonna have Mara Hart join us for that with Sex in the Sea.